Hello, and welcome to today's episode of What's My Tagline? I'm your host, Carol Flagg. On this show, we put the microphone in front of industry experts to discuss their roles, insights, and ideas on marketing, PR, branding, messaging, social media, and other related topics. You can learn more about the show on the program page on www.healthcarenowradio.com, and be sure to follow me on Twitter at Carol Flagg, and of course, connect with me on LinkedIn. On this episode, I talk with Bruce Kennedy, Vice President of Marketing, Public Relations, and Customer Success at MobileSmith's, and Luke Poppish, the Vice President of Operational Excellence at South Shore Health in Weymouth, Massachusetts. I recently hosted a webinar with Bruce and Luke talking about the 2021 outlook for mobile technology and how mobile apps can help healthcare organizations and health systems ease pandemic challenges and restore consumer confidence. Bruce and Luke are here with me today to delve a little further into mobile app usage and the outreach needed to engage patients with apps. Well, Bruce, Luke, it's great to talk to you again, and I'm so glad you agreed to be on my show today.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, so I've already sort of pre-warned you, and as you know, before we even get into the heart of the conversation, what we're going to be chatting about today, is that I ask all my guests, my very first question is, if you had to describe yourself as a tagline, what would it be? And Bruce, we'll start with you.
So, I'm so happy to actually be asked that, because I always thought I wasn't really cool enough to have it in line. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, but I had to think back a little bit to what I would tagline myself at. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember. I'm going to probably date this a little bit, but Adidas had a campaign. I think it was when they had first signed Kobe Bryant onto, or at least a few years after they signed Kobe Bryant onto the product, and it was impossible as nothing. And I think it was paired with Kobe Bryant, like I think jumping over a Lamborghini that was being driven at him at like 40 miles an hour, and that kind of thing. So it was a really cool commercial spot, and the impossible is nothing, it was like one of those typical, poorly grammatically structured taglines. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Shaking your head, going, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds really cool. And then, and that kind of dovetailed with around the time that I began working at Duke University Health System. And, it began to coalesce for me as to, this is what I wanted to represent as someone in healthcare, right? That healthcare is incredibly complicated. The delivery of care and medicine is amazingly complex. And, if you just looked at it for a moment purely, it would drive you crazy. But when you break it down into its components and parts, you begin to realize that, impossible is nothing. And the work that we do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, while it may seem impossible to people that are looking on the outside in, it's not. It's nothing but people putting their heads down, going to work every day, doing the things they were trained to do, and in very large part doing the things that they love. And that's how I treated or try to treat my time every day that I get to work within healthcare, with hospitals like Luke's, with all of our clients. And that's what that means to me now, because you get to see a lot of special things when you work in the field that I think we're lucky enough to work in. And so I've held on to impossible as nothing for a long time, and tried to broaden out to other segments of my life that I thought were really, really difficult. But then breaking it down to its component parts, you begin to realize that, okay, this is nothing but step after step after step to get to that which you think might be impossible.
Yeah. What is that old saying? How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Yeah.
It's just, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, that's a very positive tagline. Luke.
Yeah, no, I don't know why I had to follow Bruce, Carol. So I really appreciate the order of things. Maybe.
Well, in case you wanted to shorten yours or change yours.
Maybe on the edit you can put me first and you can reword the thing. I don't know what you do over there in the production booth, but we could definitely tweak that a bit. Business. I mean, my business tagline. I feel like it's probably more of how I feel than maybe a tagline. Is I often feel like a thoughtfully progressive administrator stuck in a traditional industry or a traditional world. It can be challenging at times to try to be forward thinking Would you feel like the industry that you're in tends to be one who is slow to move, to adopt new technology or new thought patterns, and not so much in the medicine, because obviously we've made huge advances in the clinical aspects in medicine. But as Bruce mentioned in his opening or his tagline, the challenges that we face in between all of the clinical interactions around the operations often feel quite archaic and very slow to change. So I think my tagline would be "Kill them with positivity." I walk around all day smiling and saying that everything is grand, because if you're in charge of improvement and you're not feeling good about it, then you're not going to get many people to buy into it.
Oh, that's so funny.
From a personal standpoint, I'm a dad who had kids, so we wouldn't have to grow up. And so I continue to do that. I continue to be quite immature on a regular basis outside of work.
Oh, that's so funny. I've got Roberta Flack going through my head, killing me softly with patience. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. It's such a rough word to use, as too in the medical field. I wish I had something better, but you know what I mean? But hey, what are you gonna do? I gotta take what they give me.
That's really great. So, our listening audience can already tell that you two, besides partnering and working together and doing a lot of great things, are obviously good friends too. So, with that segue, because we're going to get to this conversation around mobile apps and what the work that you've done together on behalf of South Shore Health. Let's talk a little bit though, or hear a little bit of your story and your journey as to how you got to where you are today. I know a little bit about your backgrounds because we did this webinar together, but for the benefit of our listening audience, and Luke, I'll start with you.
Oh, I was just about to say, Bruce, go ahead. You open them, I'll close them. You know what I mean? We're like a ski team from the 80s.
That's right.
I'm so evil.
It's all right, Carol. It's all good. So my journey has been really quite interesting. Well, I don't find it interesting. I find it pretty boring. But I mean, I've been around quite a long time, and I started in engineering, of all things. I was a mechanical engineer for 11 years, and pretty much hated every day of it. It just wasn't for me. I liked the design aspects, but really had no intrinsic value or real self-fulfillment while doing those jobs. I bounced around quite a bit, always looking for, I think, the perfect job, and realized that it just didn't exist in the industry that I had put myself in. So coming out of that, I took a few steps back and decided I wanted to get into healthcare. Fortunately, a little while after I moved into operations management in healthcare, I came upon a job as a lean facilitator in Denver, Colorado at a Denver Health, which is the safety net hospital for the city and county of Denver. And that's where I really started to learn about the processes. And as I mentioned, a little bit earlier in this discussion, the processes in between all of the clinical care, because obviously I'm not a physician. I have no clinical knowledge whatsoever, and I tell people that often just in case they might be mistaken and ask me for some advice, some really really bad or misguided advice on whatever it might be ailing them. So I really got into the efficiencies or the lack thereof in healthcare, and starting to look at Denver Health really. We were always really on that fine line of being in the positive or negative at the end of the year, because we were a safety net hospital. So efficiency gains and process improvement was really our method of survival. When I moved back to the East Coast, I think one of the things I found being back in Massachusetts, I'm originally from New England. I'm a Mainer. For 18 years. I grew up in a little town in Maine with still has no stoplights. It's 2020 for the record on this podcast, and we still don't have a stoplight. But anyway, so when I got back here, I think one of the things I noticed, or still continue to notice, is there's quite a bit more resources, quite a bit more money and dedicated to healthcare in Massachusetts than there was in Colorado. So I think a little bit of the lack of efficiency gains or the lack of focus on improvement is because it just hasn't been necessary. I think that money and decent margins hide a lot of faults. And so what I've been trying to do here now, as I moved into the role here of first of a senior lean advisor based on my lean experience at Denver Health, I started with that and trying to get people to look for waste and processes. I bounced around a little bit internally because I found some new opportunities, and then, sit where I am now as Vice President of Operational Excellence. Really what I'm just trying to do is create burning platforms for us every day that have a lot to do with efficiency and patient movement and patient satisfaction and experience, and get away from the traditional firefighting that we tend to do in healthcare and gravitate towards because of a lot of folks, a lot of my colleagues training, and try to move us towards having that focus, that determination, and kind of that drive to, when times are okay, to continue to look for efficiencies, to continue to look for ways to improve our customer experience, so that we can be successful and reach every patient in the community that needs us. So, it's been an interesting, what I try to do is apply my engineering brain to a more, I would say, personable or caring environment where, at the end of the day, the thing that we deal with or handle our patients and actual human beings, and trying to figure out how to make their interactions with physicians, their interactions with our system as enjoyable as they can be, depending on what they're coming to seek help from us for. So that's kind of how I got to this spot now and talking with you all.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And Bruce, you get to follow that up.
Boom, take that, Bruce.
Thanks.
Hey, everyone listening, listen, that's right. See, you set the bar high, Bruce, and that's what happens.
I appreciate that. What was really crazy is that I think the toughest question anyone ever asked me was, I was once sitting with a recruiter a while back, and they said, well, talk to me a little bit about your career arc. And I was kind of like, Luke, I was kind of like, well, it's not quite an arc. It's more like this squiggly line that stops and starts, and those kind of things. I've always wanted to be one of those people that had like a career arc, but much like Luke, I didn't start out in healthcare. I started out in nonprofit social services, actually, out of school, and gravitated into communications and media from that particular vantage point, and then later got into advertising agencies and marketing firms. And so I was an advertising agency grunt for a few years.
Oh man, after my own heart.
Yeah, I know, right?
Sorry,
trust
Luke.
me.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Kindred spirit here. I
cannot. To the audience, I'm signing off now. I'm just going to let Bruce and Carol finish this thing. And, it's nice talking to you.
Luke.
Yeah. Well, the stories I could tell about working for some of the biggest brands that you know of, and some don't exist anymore. And you could tell they weren't going to exist for too long, based upon, working for them as their agency. Yeah. But so yeah, really, really fun time. Learned a whole lot, and then, sometime around the late '90s, when the .com environment took off, pretty much anybody that was in agencies or any place else got sucked into the allure of great money, great stock options, instant wealth, that kind of thing. And so I found a lot of my brother and I in the advertising world ended up working in the .com space. And from there, when everything kind of imploded, a bunch of us that I knew, my kind of social group said, hey, we don't want to really go back to real work again. We don't want to go back to it.
That's hard.
So Bruce and I haven't been friends for very long. Bruce, why couldn't we have met sooner? That's been my life dream, is to not return to regular work.
Gosh, see that's a great tagline. Just kidding.
Yeah, see?
Right. And but to imagine, for 3 to 4 years, we had literally done anything we wanted to do, and people paid us for that experience, right? That was the .com world. And so we decided to create our own company. Now, bear in mind, this is right after the .com implosion. There are 3 young guys who decide, hey, we want to create our own digital media agency, right? And back then, digital media was still fairly new, especially digital media advertising was really new. We were still talking about, impressions and clicks and causes per action and cost per actions and all that kind of craziness. And, so in our minds, starting this company was really about, okay, we're going to, be like one of those Corona commercials. We're going to run the company. We called it like a lifestyle, we called it a lifestyle agency, right? We literally on the website called this thing a lifestyle agency. And so we had this vision of being on the beach, in Mexico and chilling with our laptops and, all this stuff. And we never made it to any beach anywhere.
Oh, no.
Yeah. We were stuck, either talking to people that owed us money or people that we owed money to. Like, it was a real business. We were forced to be a real company. And so the big client we took on at that point, we had a couple and we did a hodgepodge of clients. Anybody that basically paid us was our client at that time. And we had done a few odds and end projects for a couple of hospitals in the Southeast region. And then we got connected to Duke. And the interesting thing about Duke University Health System at that time was that they had their own internal creative shop, but they didn't have a ton of marketing strategists. And that's what we felt we were at the time. And so, we found it within Duke. We pitched them a couple of times on projects that they had a need for, and we just kept nothing went anywhere. So finally, after 2 years of pitching Duke, we finally were able to get a project. And after that, the projects never stopped coming over and over again. Like once you're in, you're in.
Yeah.
And at some point, Duke represented roughly about, 80% of our revenues for the company.
Wow.
And it became a really serious client. And over a period of time, as we realized we didn't want to really run a company, we really liked the work part of it, the actual creative and the strategy part of it, not the business side of it. We began to kind of look at how do we kind of unpack this and do what we wanted to do. At the time, I was the point person for Duke. And so I naturally began to look at Duke as my only client. And at some point, there was a change in leadership at Duke. And the chancellor changed. And so the teams we were working with changed. And now I'm really scared. I'm kind of like, whoa, this is my bread and butter. And I went into our first kind of re-pitch meeting where you sit down with your client and go, here's all the things we've done for you in the last 2 years. Please, please, please keep us on. You kind of make your case of, and it's really pleading. There's no way to make that any prettier than please. You're begging.
Just one level above begging.
Yes, just a very small level, Carol. Just one.
A breath away. Yeah.
Yes,
right, exactly.
It is exactly. Yeah. And so the person, the executive chancellor or the vice chancellor I was talking to was new to the organization. They did come down from Harvard Partners. And in the middle of my presentation, she looks at her watch. And I'm thinking, this is not going well. And so she said, listen, I'm going to let you finish. But, after you're done, can we talk about how we get you to come on board here at Duke full time? And I was like, it's almost like the clouds opened up. I heard music and violins, and I was kind of like, And so it was an interesting transition because I transitioned out of my own consulting firm into Duke University Health System. I also, and from my perspective, that really launched my career in healthcare, in healthcare strategy and marketing, communications and development. Because I was just kind of a jack of all trades, master of none agency. And
that was going to be my tagline, man.
Jack of all trades, master.
See, like, this is kismet, man. We were meant to work together.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
That was going to be my tagline too.
No way. Look at that. 3 peas in a pod. How fun is this?
Well, Luke knows this in healthcare. A lot of the people that gravitate into healthcare and have these long careers have MHA, Masters of Health Administration degrees. They come in, they do these fellowships, and it's like you talk to them and they seem as though they wanted to work in hospital administration out of the womb. It's like, what were you doing? Well, I wanted this all my life. I'm like, you wanted to work in hospital administration all your life? Like, what were
when you were
thinking?
5 years old? No, I want to go to the moon. No, I want to work for hospital admin.
and then your kids ask you what you do, and then you tell them, and then they go, so what is that? It's like, don't worry about it. Like, I can't even get into it. You guys aren't going to care. It's quite boring.
and you're trying, like, I had the same problem. Like, I tried to give my son some relative context that he can go and brag about me, and and the best he can come up with was, my dad works at Duke, and I'm like,
there you go.
Well, All right, that'll work. That'll work. At basketball? No, not in the basketball area.
Really.
No, not in men's basketball. But
Yeah.
so that was how I got into healthcare, and that was roughly circa 2000, 2001 maybe. Working at Duke, starting your health career at Duke is kind of like a blessing and a curse. It's like being thrown into the deep end of the ocean. But at the same time, I couldn't have had a better education and proving ground in that space, because I went from being kind of a generalist marketing person to working in strategic development within one of the largest healthcare systems in the Southeast, with an incredible brand to work with. And so you learn a lot, you experience a lot. And so that was my entry point. And then from there, I stayed within that healthcare space. After I left Duke, I understood after working at Duke, I had a passion for quality and safety. And I worked with a global safety organization focused on surgical safety, and worked very closely with medical device companies that were working with hospitals across the globe. And that was a really fun experience. And then began to go back more to my roots in helping hospitals better communicate. I mean, once you have an understanding of the challenges hospitals face, you realize that they're a very unique communication and marketing space. And really, the people that can help hospitals from a communication and marketing and development perspective are those who've been in the game for a little while.
Sure.
And I also began to realize that's why so many agencies seem to fail at being able to work with hospitals or healthcare delivery environments. And so I began to go back into working more with hospitals and pharmaceutical companies around how to best position and how to best engage patients and drug purchasers for a number of years. In that time, I worked on product development with Everyday Health and WebMD on the digital side, because I come from that environment. So, it's been a bunch of jumbly things since I started in healthcare, but I've always stayed within the space of how do you bring patients and consumers closer to a better healthcare journey. And fundamentally, that's what we do now at MobileSmith, right? Where our vehicle just happens to be, our vehicle on that journey happens to be mobile. But the ideals are still the same. How do we create environments? How do we create connection points that are relevant, that allow consumers to better engage their own health and allow hospitals and providers to better engage consumers and their patients on that journey in a more productive way? When you can do that, as Luke will always tell you, you then can conquer some of those challenges that you may be facing from both an operational, financial, and engagement perspective. Better health literacy, better health navigation, decreasing leakage opportunities. So, being able to better cost contain from an efficiency perspective. So those are all the things that we're focused on now as we work with our clients. But that's that kind of weird arc where, once you realize how healthcare delivery works, and I humbly think I understand how some of it works. I'm probably another 30 years in the game, I'll probably be able to have a better feel for it. But you understand that, there are certain places where you can support operations a little bit better, certain places where you can shore up certain efforts, and you do see a better return, for the effort you're putting into to improving hospital operations or improving patient engagement. But it's been a really wonderful experience over the last 23 years of working in healthcare.
Well, that patient engagement, as you say that, and the patient experience, and going back to the mobile side of it, that's a great pass off to my real first big question for the two of you, which is
we planned that. That was
perfect.
We've been working on that for the last.
Right. That's how Bruce rolls. I said they were going to tee this up and give Carol a softball and just awesome. Flow right into it.
So mobile apps and mobile apps specifically used and developed for hospitals for the patients. So just first from, I guess, a 30,000 feet up level. I mean, obviously there's an app for everything, right? I mean, we're, in this environment today in 2020 with apps, I don't know what we did before they came onto the scene, but from a health system standpoint, or this usage standpoint, I know that I'm sure there are numbers out there that support and could be found, and maybe you have some that, support usage, that, patients do want to use mobile apps to engage. But certainly I would think anecdotally, because the work that you guys have done, anecdotally, mobile apps and mobile apps specifically used by patients to communicate with their hospitals. What is the landscape right now in 2020?
Yeah, so I'll kick this one off because we talked about maybe some operative numbers to play around with here in talking about this. So the operative numbers are 64% and 71%. Transcend Insights, I think it's an arm, still currently an arm of Humana. It's their population health management company. It did some work a couple of years ago with their membership and patient groups, and 64% of the folks patients that they interacted with said that they use some type of mobile device for healthcare. Now, that could be one that's developed for them by the hospital. It could be a third-party app that comes in with your phone, but nonetheless, 64% of the patients they spoke to are tracking or using a device to note or track their healthcare, right? So, and that number is going to grow. The technology, the bandwidth, the ease of app use, the ease of phone use. So the only thing that might be giving people pause is that the fact that, in the next probably 3 to 5 years, cell phone prices will probably be above $1,500, to buy a cell phone. Yeah. But, notwithstanding that, so we know that patients want or are using their devices in some way to track their health, right? The other operative number is 71%. So that 7% are those patients who would like their care providers to have access to some of the information that they're tracking on their phone, right? So those are two numbers that really undergird the value of mobile health applications, right? We know that patients are using them, and we know that patients want their care providers to have access and to the information that they're putting into their devices. And for MobileSmith, that's always been a good platform to grow, our new apps with, right? We see it in our current clients like Luke and partners like Luke in South Shore, and we see it with our other hospital partners as well.
Bruce, you have other partners? Carol,
oh my gosh.
I'm just
wow.
finding this out.
Wow.
After we're done with Carol, Bruce, we're going to therapy. I thought that we were your only partner.
Yeah, but Luke, you're the only one we really love.
Exactly.
Oh God, you are a good Mark. You are a good person.
I've been this for a while, Luke.
Wow.
But here's the thing, though. I mean, that to me, the pathway of utilization is a wall that we're continually knocking down, right?
Right.
And from our perspective as mobile app developers, if you develop better mobile apps, patients will use and have better experiences. We don't throw it on to the patient or the user to say, how come you don't have higher levels of utilization? From our perspective, that's our fault, right? We haven't developed the app that's compelling enough. We haven't developed the app that has enough content or an experience to support the journey that you want to have, your expectation of usability. And so, that means we have to constantly, and Luke does this, we have to constantly look at what is the app doing? How is the app being responded to? And should we change the functionality or the content of the app in order to achieve the goals that we want? And how you make that a partnership, right?
And that's been a great thing. Sorry, Bruce.
Yeah, go ahead, Luke. No, go ahead. I know where you want to go with this, so please.
No, I was going to say that's been the great thing about working with Bruce and the MobileSmith team for us is that we didn't have that constant vigilance and ability to look at those numbers, until we started on our app journey with them, and then it was really them pushing on us as much as us pushing on them to look at on a monthly basis as to what our uptake was, how long our session, our average session usage was, and things like that. And so that was extremely helpful for us on our end, because then it starts to create a value proposition. When we started working together, I was the executive director of OBGYN, and so there was quite a few layers to get through to be able to get buy-in on these things and get them approved and moving forward, especially in healthcare. And so having those type of numbers to show the engagement and to show the utilization and the time spent were extremely helpful for us in building our business case. The other things I would build on from a, kind of where are we now? Not so sure, but more industry wise from a customer perspective. I think, as I mentioned earlier, healthcare I've found over the years tends to be very tardy when it comes to adopting these new things, again, outside of anything that's medical. So anything that supports the other parts of the operation, apps at one point, even though they weren't new, were still very new for us and new for our organization and many others. We have some of the biggest healthcare, one of the biggest healthcare systems in the country, just 12 miles north of us. And there were no app offerings there for quite some time, and so you think, they have all these resources and all these people to be able to do this. And the whole society is moving towards mobile technology. And then you see kind of that void in healthcare, and you kind of wonder, like, why? I think the biggest barrier for some reason, but people are very protective of their healthcare data,
Sure.
Which, again, for certain things, I totally understand it. But you can go on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram and know literally everything about somebody's life. But if you want to find out if I have my tonsils out or not, you're never going to find that out. I don't want anybody to know that. You know what I mean? And it's like it's an interesting thing what we pick to share and what we feel like we can't share. And again, the protections are much better now, and especially with MobileSmith, all of the integration that they've done, it all meets all of the security requirements and everything that we need to be sure that we're HIPAA compliant. But those initial talks about just engaging with patients create all these flags with compliance and all these flags with our legal department about, what's being shared, how's it being shared, what are the protections. And so it's this constant, ebb and flow between trying to make these things available to patients and their providers, as Bruce mentioned, trying to engage patients in their own healthcare and their own well-being, while also making sure that they're protected, and that also that your healthcare system's protected so that you're not, violating any privacy. Right. And so, with other apps, for other things, you just don't have that same privacy concern. You may with a credit card number or a social security number, for the various shopping sites, et cetera, the shopping apps. But, the level of detail and need for security is just so heightened in healthcare that I feel like I'm making excuses for us when I feel like we should be more progressive. But I try to put myself.
Damned. No, I
try.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Carol said that. That is Carol's words, not mine. You guys have to excuse me. I have compliance knocking on my door right now. No, I'm kidding. So that's kind of, when you talk about kind of where we're at, it's almost like it's still relatively new in healthcare, even though apps have been around for God knows how many years now,
Yeah. And and one thing that, those compliance and security issues aside, which is, not making, that is a big issue. And
for sure.
I'm not trying to, But that's one of the things that you talked about on the webinar that we did together that I also thought was really interesting is that you talked about when, just working with MobileSmith, this idea that, you better have an idea as to what you want this app to do, right? Not just an app in a vacuum.
Yes,
I want an app. Well, what does that mean? And
it's almost like a reliving of when everybody needed a website, right? When the internet blew up, and it's like, if you don't have a website, I cannot patronize your business because I can't find you on the web, right? And so everybody ran to get one, but I don't think that everybody ran to get one with an idea of mind of what we were trying to solve or what problem we were addressing with our internet, our website, and then who are we trying to reach? And it's often similar with apps. I mean, you think about, as you mentioned, Carol, there's another app. There's so many apps out there, but think about how many like dead apps there are out there, or apps that get loaded onto a phone, get looked at once, and probably unless somebody's really vigilant about deleting, maybe just sit there for months or years, and what I think happens a lot of the time is we rush to get something to catch up with everybody else, but without any concept or idea in mind of what exactly we're trying to accomplish when we do that thing. You know what I mean? Just to be an also ran, if that's what you want to do, then that's fine. But when you're talking about a value proposition and trying to make sure that you're showing some return on your investment with all of these efforts, you kind of want to have a problem that you're trying to solve with this app, and not just make an app to have it. Right. Because then what happens, or what I've seen is that then it's not a dynamic process, and it basically just becomes a stagnant thing. And then you see little to no value for our patients or our consumers, because that never was the intent or never the design. It was just to have something out there.
Right. That's how the conversation starts, right? Perhaps with a client, right? Is like, what are you trying to solve, right?
It does in a very real way. It does. And, interesting, because I've had the opportunity to work on both sides of the house for a number of years. I could tell you that Luke is absolutely right. I mean, sometimes the problem you're solving in developing that website or getting that first mobile app done honestly may have nothing to do with your patients. It may have to do with your internal audiences.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Your key leaders will look at another health system, usually 12 miles up the road.
Yeah. We were first. This goes on the record for this podcast. Don't let those academics fool you, man. We were there. We were there.
Go to South Shore. South Shore.
Well, now, Luke, they are man's greatest hospital. Don't forget that.
I know. You can't compete with that.
Yeah. So the interesting thing though is that there would be at least half a dozen requests that would hit my marketing department at Duke, and they had no real connection to patient care, patient services delivery, patient journey, or engagement. They were really about, hey, I was driving to work this morning, Bruce, and I saw this billboard for our competitor. Why don't we have more billboards out there? And I go, okay, well, here's the data on billboards, and how they perform. Well, you know what? I'm just tired of seeing that billboard. It's like, you know what? It'd be cheaper for us to go out there and burn the billboard down than for us to sign a multi-year contract to compete with a billboard from our competitor.
Or go a different way to work.
Or go a different we're out there kind of fiddling with this GPS system, kind of like, detour.
Less vandalism.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of those needs I understand are related to your internal constituents. What do they want to see? What are they seeing happen? And it's always my job to kind of push that back and at least give realistic data about what that will represent in terms of value. And sometimes you win those value arguments, sometimes you don't. And you know what? When you don't, you end up having a billboard next to a competitor's, or you end up having a website that really is reflective of a digital business card versus anything that's doing any real work for you. So you're right. We do start the process by asking the question, what are you trying to impact? What problems are you trying to solve? Because we want to be very careful about, at least from our perspective, about what mobile can do and what mobile can't do. I mean, if, Luke will readily tell you, especially in his role now, if you have a poorly performing, service line because you guys have the service line has incredible leakage, right? You're not going to solve that with, a mobile app.
Exactly.
Right.
That's a physician, compensation issue, physician value issue, provided stuff has to be done there. So we certainly want to be very circumspect with, what a hospital is trying to accomplish with mobile, what they're trying to impact. And even if we can't get it down to the KPI level, right, we do look at it from an impact level. So you don't have, a desired KPI set for a mobile app. What are you trying to change? What are you trying to impact? Right. And that usually helps guide us and guide the client through what type of mobile app, should it be a mobile app, kind of conversation.
Yeah, and that's where I feel Bruce's pain a lot of the time, from his perspective as a customer of his. The other thing, when you don't have any sort of a problem in mind or any goal of what you're trying to do and what you hope the app will help you do, what ends up happening if it does fall flat is that a lot of the times then the customer will turn and look at MobileSmith and say, well, you guys didn't do your, you didn't do your job or you didn't design this app right. And, as Bruce said, they take as much ownership of wanting this to be successful as a lot of their clients do. But when you don't start with any kind of picture and your solution is an app searching for a problem, that's where I think even from Bruce's standpoint, where they tend to, that tends to be a challenge for them too, because Now it's, oh, we'll go to a different app vendor because, MobileSmith didn't do what we told them we wanted to do. Well, you're looking at it and going, you had no vision of what exactly you did want to do other than to have it exist. So that, then you're just going to hop from vendor to vendor, searching again, with this app concept, searching for a problem to solve that may not even exist.
Right. The marketing knee jerk, just
I
need an app.
Right. Got it.
Yeah. So Luke, talk a little bit about, I know you started with the OBGYN app, and then, but now you're on your 4th or 5th, I think, with MobileSmith, right?
Yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah.
My goal was 5. We're almost,
Five, right.
We're in development on 4. We have 3 live, and I'm searching for a 5th. I don't have a problem yet though, so I got to follow my own advice and wait to see if there's anything that we might be able to fit.
Well, I think that's interesting. So, if you're going on your 5th, then to me, the other side of the coin here has been addressed and the challenge has been met, which in my opinion, or my sense, is I have these great apps. They're going to solve a challenge or a problem or impact the patient experience. Now I got to get the patient to download them and use them.
Yeah. And so, to give you a really, really brief idea of apps and, really short problems we were trying to solve. The first problem was a communication problem with our outside OBGYN offices, our patients, and our hospital, and trying to have a unified message and a unified branding, regardless of which private practice our expectant moms chose. We wanted to have, one message, one clear and concise description of what to expect for their labor experience when they got to our hospital, and then what to expect in their postpartum experience. And so looking at our patient feedback and reading social media and understanding kind of where we stood and where the confusion was, we had a specific problem of alleviating confusion, improving communication, and engaging, a patient population that, as I get older, the patient population that are of childbearing age, all are younger, for the most part. And so they were really, had already been really facile and experienced with apps in general. And so that was the problem or case there. The second one was the development of a new program, bariatric program that didn't exist at our hospital prior. We started that and stood that program up. And then the problem for that, or the problem statement there, was how do we engage patients and inform them of this new offering and get them to come to our in-person, which is so dated now. Isn't that crazy? Like, I think of in-person meetings and I'm like, I can't remember that. But anyway, the problem we were trying to solve there was to get more patients to attend our information sessions and figure out if bariatrics was the journey that they wanted to go on, and bariatric surgery to address whatever health challenges they were facing. The third one, that is our newest one, the problem we were trying to solve there was patient engagement and comfort with the care of their babies in the NICU. So we have a level 3 NICU here. And a lot of the feedback we received from patients was a lot of anxiety, both while their baby was in the NICU, which again is totally understandable, and you wouldn't fix that completely, but also anxiety when the baby was ready to be discharged from the NICU, because a lot of premature babies, even when they're, safe enough to leave the NICU and eventually go home, still often require a lot of extra care or present some other challenges. And imagine being in, I was a new parent once upon a time, and, I had a healthy baby that was born at term and was still freaked out, leaving the hospital. You feel like you're just thrown into the world. And so imagine doing that same thing, but with a baby that may have some special requirements or need some extra care. And so that was the problem we were trying to solve there. And what we did was essentially create an app where new parents could learn about care in the NICU, the bathing, the feeding, clothing, et cetera, whatever it might be, and actually engage them in rounding with the neonatologist and with the nursing staff in the NICU, and actually lead some of those rounds by first educating themselves with the information that we provided on the app, taking an interactive quiz on that app and then proving that I would want to say proficiency with being able to do those various tasks. And so what we found so far is a lot of the feedback from the parents now that have used that app have left with their baby being discharged much more confident and much more informed than they would have been prior. So those are kind of the three problems that we were trying to solve. The fourth one is an internal one, actually. So we went backwards from, instead of doing an internal app first and then going external, we did 3 external facing. And now our internal one is around antimicrobial stewardship. And, simply that means, using the right antibiotics at the right amounts at the right time so that we don't use too many antibiotics or incorrect antibiotics, and having a quick reference for a lot of our physicians, which they've been asking for some time. So it's still a customer request. It's still a problem that needs to be solved. It just happens to be an internal request and an internal customer rather than external. But that's how, that's kind of where it really takes off. And I was joking at the beginning of when I said, we need a fifth. I would say we only need a fifth if we have a fifth problem where this mobile technology and MobileSmith, developing something with MobileSmith makes sense. We could be at 4 forever if we find that we don't have any other problems that could be addressed. I have a feeling we will sometime in the future, but again, Bruce, they'll remain nameless, but some of Bruce's other partners that I just found out about today, I think have 5 apps, and none of it is a competition. But I'm just saying, as a preferred partner, I need to get on the ball.
I need another app. Bruce, you're a marketing expert, and I would imagine, working with Luke and those other clients that we don't want to talk about.
Yes, that's right.
Remain nameless.
That's right.
I would think that this idea of, what you need to do to get the patients actively involved in using the app, I'm sure is an integral part of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. What's really funny, the more we go forward, the more the old standards, and Carol will get this from her background as well, content is still king, right?
Yeah.
To a certain degree. With mobile apps, it's content and how content is used, and that is really what defines functionality, right? So it's how content is used to make my life easier or to give me some value. So I think there's always still a balance, right? There's that, how much value is this providing to me as the patient or the hospital customer, right? The care consumer, and how connected is it to the experience? So we've had experiences where we put out what we thought were killer apps for patients, right? This is going to really, just totally, streamline their experience, and it's going to provide so much information and all these good things. And so we solved one part of the equation, but the back end of the equation being the providers and the care delivery teams were not quite as on board. And Luke, when I will tell you, if you don't get your care delivery teams, your internal support teams involved in these applications that are patient facing, they will die a swift death. Sometimes they'll die a not so swift death. They'll die an agonizing death. Unless you
just pick one. Either way,
right.
They die.
Yeah, they're going to die.
Wow.
So one of the things that's really important, and one of the things that Luke and his team do exceptionally well, is before they even come to us with a problem or an app, they've already or app idea, they've already had that discussion. They've done the internal homework and done the internal work with the care delivery teams, with everybody along that patient care journey, to make sure that it is a problem. It's okay. In healthcare, you have to understand, healthcare manages and juggles a bunch of problems throughout any given strategic period. Those aren't the things that are important. It's what healthcare or hospital is willing to tackle during that period. So, it's one of those deals where, we've got 20 things on our priority grid, but we're only going to tackle 3 of them, because that's all the bandwidth we have to be able to do it with, right? So, if you have an internal team and some internal stakeholders that recognize the problem and are willing to work at this very moment towards solving the problem, and you can define that problem, then you have the makings of a great, user-facing application, right? The rest of it falls on our shoulders as developers, and Luke's as the client to be able to go, or the stakeholder leader to be able to go, okay, here's how we believe this thing should work and look and feel and interconnect with the EMR or not, or should it, that begins the conversation. But I think it's a balancing act. You got to have both internal support from all your many matrix stakeholders, and you have to be able to develop content and function that is going to deliver value. And then I think the rest of it is integrated marketing that all hospital marketers know how to do. A lot of our apps that are most successful, honestly, on the patient side, are those that are that the internal provider teams are very comfortable talking about. That upon check-in or check-out of a patient, they're talking about the app. Hey, this could make it easier for you. All the patient waiting room signage is helpful. Pamphlets are helpful. The time it takes for you to help your patient download the app is always helpful, and how to use it and those kind of things. There really is just a checklist of things you need to do to market an app. The rest of it is really, you have to have a supportive stakeholder team and a relevant content-based app with great function. And that's the magic sauce.
And that's a really good point about the engagement of the internal team. Our first app around pregnancy was a collaborative effort with midwifery, our nurses, both on the birthing unit and our maternal infant unit, and our providers. And so that one was it was new to us. Apps were new to us at the time. So that was a collaboration where I was pushing a little bit, getting information and trying to get this off the ground. The last three that I mentioned have all been internal requests directly to us, asking, can we have it coming to us with an actual problem and saying, do you think the app, or do you think MobileSmith can develop something for us that'll solve this problem? And two of those three were physicians, physician-led, which is, as Bruce mentioned, is really critical. And when you talk about marketing to patients and trying to get the message out there, they tend to be the best ambassadors for that marketing, because they're going to talk about what helps them do their job, but also what they feel is the most beneficial for the patient. And so for bariatrics, it was our bariatric surgeon that requested it, and for the NICU, it was our head of neonatology that requested the development and design. And so when they're all in on it from the jump, that makes everything else, much more seamless and much easier, because the information is fed to you. You're not, sometimes when we try to do improvement or try to do any type of outreach, we run into, things where we're pulling for information or trying to get stuff from folks who may not be that engaged or forthcoming. And this one, we got so much information, or those two, it was really trying to pare it down and make it make sense to the patients, but also useful. Right. And so, I'm glad Bruce said that, and I apologize for missing that point, because that's a really, really important thing, especially in the healthcare environment.
Yeah.
Hey man, I got your back always.
So as we're sort of winding down our time together, our conversation here, I obviously be tough not to have a conversation around, obviously, a big challenge right now for health systems and is COVID, right? So this intersection, right, of mobile apps and dealing with COVID. What's happening on that score?
So I'll jump on this one first.
Yeah, I'll let you go, Bruce, because I know. I was like, all right, go ahead.
Yeah, my guess is that those folks who are on the hospital side dealing with COVID now are forced to deal with it, at the end of a fire hose, right? So I think that's
a great analogy. Yeah.
Whereas the vendors like MobileSmith and partners like MobileSmith are able to probably look at it from how can we apply the right kinds of technology and technology support to be able to support hospitals better during this time, right? I will say this, that COVID has ushered in a time where vendors like us look at how do we support the remote care process, right? Because, that's probably one of the most important things that has changed in the last 6 months. You do have hospitals that are now providing, maybe 400% or more remote visits than they were prior to COVID. You also have situations where hospitals, because of COVID, have had to rethink their elective surgery operations.
Right.
And that's big, because that's big revenue for most hospitals. Oddly enough, the downturn in elective surgery also comes at a time when you're not seeing as much trauma hit your ED that would drive surgical volumes and drive revenue. So it's a really awful time for care delivery environments in hospitals where everything bad is coming together at once. So our approach has been, listen, how do we support the whole remote medicine enterprise? And we obviously at Mobile had a number of products that were focused on pushing information out to patients. Over the last year or so, even before COVID, we began developing products that were mobile products that were focused on bridging a gap between a patient's EMR and that patient's mobile device in such a way that it allowed or allows providers to assign pre-surgical or pre-appointment instructions to a patient without ever seeing them or having to see them. And as that patient begins to check off the things that they've completed as assigned tasks, that provider at the hospital can then see what is going on with that patient within their EMR dashboard. So it allows a hospital to extend not just the distance between them and their patient from a COVID safety perspective, it also multiplies the number of patients that the hospital or provider can monitor at one time from a remote basis. Even with telemedicine, you still need a face-to-face environment to be able to pull that off. Here, you can take 100 patients and have them assign pathways or tasks to 100 patients and just remotely monitor those patients as to how they're completing their tasks. And then most importantly, you're able to then do what I think hospitals do very well, which is intervene and recover, right?
Yeah.
No process is perfect. There are going to be mistakes. But if I have an early warning system, what's going on with my patient because they're not completing tasks, I then know who to focus my effort on. And I can be that individual or that provider or that nurse manager or that care team member who says, okay, Mrs. Johnson is not actually getting these things done that we need her to get done before a procedure. Let's go ahead and reach out to her. Let's go ahead and send her a note. Let's call her family member. Let's get her the support that we need, that she needs to be ready for this upcoming procedure or episodic experience at a hospital. And so that's important. I think that's where the bulk of the industry is going, to be able to undergird and support that distance care and remote care experience for patients and hospitals.
Yeah. The first go round, back in the winter when everything first, hit in the States, we had so many problems that we were just trying to process on a daily basis, just trying to understand the disease, understand the spread, and then how to care for it, that we didn't really, no offense to Bruce, but we didn't have a lot in mind as far as apps go. We were too busy just trying to figure out, what the heck to do next.
Right.
But we
surviving.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we did reach out at one point to try to figure out something for employees. So again, another internal kind of app where we tried to figure out something for employee attestations that, we were symptom free and all of the questions that you get asked now pretty much anywhere you go, and specifically when you go to hospitals or healthcare systems. So there wasn't as much there, but as Bruce mentioned, the navigation or the transition to a lot more mobile visits and a lot more remote and virtual visits. Now I think we're in the phase of healthcare where we've pushed a change forward that people were very reticent to push forward around virtual visits. There was a lot of concern about the efficacy and the safety and all of those things. But what COVID has done is kind of accelerated that acceptance of those things, both for patients, healthcare systems, but then also the insurers. An important thing here is, getting reimbursed for the care that you're providing. And so now I think as we reset, we're able to now look back again and say, okay, what other problems might we have where an app or a mobile solution might make sense? And so, when Bruce talks about the different offerings that they've been developing, and as we talk further and look at different ways to move forward with virtual care, that's something we'll definitely consider now that we've had a little bit of time to breathe and can start to prepare for this winter and try to keep our communities and our patients and families safe, but also cared for. And so that's I think that's really kind of moving into 21, where we're headed, is to try to figure out where the synergies are between our mobile offerings and our inpatient, or I shouldn't say inpatient as in the hospital, but in-person visits, and what makes the most sense for patients, and what may have been a waste of time or resources prior, that we don't need to keep doing now that we have some acceptance on the tech part of things.
Yeah. So clearly you're not looking for 5 apps. You're going to try to get 10 apps from MobileSmith.
Carol, you nailed it, Carol. Bruce is going to start rewriting our contract tomorrow. Now,
right now, right after this.
Remind me never to do another podcast with Bruce.
Right.
Well,
or at least where Carol's facilitating.
Right. Exactly.
Well,
Bruce.
Just so we're clear, 10 apps would make you a really, really.
Oh, really?
There we go. There we go.
Oh my God, we get that next level of special.
Yes.
Okay, I'm on it.
You'd be number one again. So Bruce, I'm gonna let you have the final word as we close out this conversation.
Well, well, first of all, thank you for having us on.
So much fun.
As you can tell, it's really hard to pull stuff out of me and Luke. I would say that look, COVID has changed a lot of our lives, both personally and professionally. It's changed the way we deliver care. It's changed how we think about care, right? And it's been monumental in its impact on the lives of care providers and patients and families and households. I think it's incumbent upon us, in partnership with hospitals, to figure out ways to, despite COVID, continually improve that journey, right? That patients and consumers walk with their hospitals. I think that's why I've stayed in healthcare as long as I have. I know Luke is dedicated to that. His title says that pretty much.
It's that excellence that's part of that.
Yes, absolutely.
It is what it is. I appreciate that, guys. I don't know what to tell
you. So I think that we're going to keep pushing the ball forward, and we're going to continue to partner with our hospital partners like Luke and South Shore, and we're going to be responsive, and forward-looking. So the idea is, hey, listen, we were talking about EMR-based remote patient management before COVID hit. It just so happens that now there is an accelerated need for that. So what's around the corner from that? There will be a post-COVID world. No doubt we will be indelibly impacted by our COVID experience. But I think Luke can tell you this won't be the last pandemic that we deal with globally. So the reality is that we always have to be thinking about what our clients need, what our hospital clients need, what their stakeholders need, and whether mobile is the right fit. So whether it's COVID attestation apps, whether it's EMR-based perioperative patient adherence apps. The idea is, how do we continually drive improvement and excellence into that patient journey? And I think, when you are able to do that, all of those KPIs that we measure ourselves on in terms of care delivery begin to improve. Patient sat will improve. Your HCAP scores will improve. Your provider satisfaction scores will improve. Although some would argue that would only improve if we get rid of EMRs, but your
I was gonna say we got a magic bullet for that one.
Yeah, your provider. Yeah, I know your provider and fax machines, right? Your provider satisfaction score should improve. So all the numbers should move in the right direction. But I think it's important that we continue to remain amazingly responsive to what we see happening with our patients on that care journey that they're on, and that we're working collaboratively to continually improve that care journey. And so that's what we're committed to doing at MobileSmith.
Yeah. Bruce, Luke, first of all, thank you so much for a great conversation today. I just, I believe it or not, I am going to invite you both back together again sometime in 2021 to get a follow-up. So,
Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished.
Well, okay, now Luke, not so fast. Let's talk about, I think you have to talk to our agent. I think Luke and I are going to get an agent if we go on the road. Yeah. And
good point, Bruce. I appreciate that. And Carol, we'll get back to you. I'm sorry.
You have your people call my people, and we'll make it work.
Oh my God! If you met my people, you would want to talk to them.
Thank you both again.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you, Carol.
If you're interested in learning more about mobile app technologies for your health system, visit MobileSmith Health at www.mobilesmith.com and connect with Bruce Kennedy on LinkedIn or by email at bruce.kennedy@mobilesmith.com. If you'd like to contact Luke Poppish to learn more about his experience with app development and deployment at South Shore Health, connect with him on LinkedIn or email him at lpoppish@southshorehealth.org. Have a topic idea or a guest idea for this show? Reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter or shoot me an email at carol@healthcarenowradio.com. Until next time, I'm Carol Flagg, and I want to know, what's your tagline?